from the government, and I'm here to help.
Take a look, it's in a book.
Some members of the community use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda.
Let's watch. Figure it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, I said Jokerman. Yeah. See, we're all riled up here already. Welcome back to another episode of We Figured It Out podcast. I'm your boy Michael.
And I'm Matt.
And we are the End of Days best friends, back on Brandon Kroll again. Let's go. Anyways, how you doing, dude? I know how you're doing. We're a little fired up already.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Can't wait to go after the baddies.
Yes. So I've been kind of like picking up the Bible more. I guess I never really did. But anyways, going through it, I'm like, man, there's this common theme where they all seem to like want to give something or try to make a deal. Like every story, there's a character with somebody making a deal or, trading for their daughter or hay or themselves as labor. And it's like, but at the same time, you have Jesus walking through, always being that person doing what they want, or giving it to them for free. And it's like, how come you never just hear about the regular guy throughout there, wondering, or it's always a deal to be made, I feel like, which I like, because it's a lesson. But
well, I mean, that goes back to what I think Mark's favorite play was the Faustian bargain. Faust, I think I'm pronouncing his name. I might be butchering it, but Faust. And he liked the concept that there was a bargain going on between the devil and this tormented character. And ironically, I'm like, well, that's your favorite play. What does that say about you, who's writing this whole thing on the Communist Manifesto? So, but yeah, dude, I would argue or not even argue, I would agree that, yeah, it's constantly a decision battle. And it's basically, what are you going to align with? What are you going to go with as your source of getting this accomplished, or who do you seek as your guide, in essence? Because you could pick one or two options. The other one is looking to an idol, looking to usury, looking for consulting dead spirits, fill in the blank with all this stuff, and that's what God says don't do. Or there's the other one of saying you're going to be the pillar that guides my people through the wilderness. You're going to provide me manna on the ground every morning. I think. Yeah, the theme of what do you want is not something you just take out of the Bible. However, I think what they have done is they've weaponized that with a lot of mega churches, basically making that into a prosperity gospel. It's like, well, you look at this story, you look at that story, and you literally can do that with every story. However, you're looking for it as we get, like, I think it's James 4:3, you ask and receive not, that you ask amiss, that you can consume it upon your lusts. You're wanting it for the wrong reasons. The other one is saying, God, I want to do better. I want to do this because blah, blah, blah. But not my will, but your will be done, right? Mm-hmm. You're praying, but there's a little bit of that caveat of saying, God, I don't understand the greater scheme and picture, the spiritual battle going on, but I'm going to lay it into your hands. This is the desire of my heart, but it doesn't mean necessarily that it's good or it's for this time. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. I was like, they're always chasing something, but Jesus is right there trying to tell them too,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Like anything they're chasing is like the wrong thing. Like 90% of, like, even now it's riches, like that's all everybody chases is riches, right?
That's yeah, absolutely. Which is crazy too.
I mean, once you get riches, I guess there's only so much to do after that. Then you just go after power.
I have such like a tear with that, because we have the podcast and it's like, oh man, you could be rich and famous. But then like the more part of my heart is like, dude, Jesus was murdered over like money. You're not supposed to have that shit,
Yeah.
Yeah. So part of that too. I'm like, no.
He was sold for the price of a slave at that time. That was the average price of a current slave. So I'm like, sold for the price of slave to redeem the slaves from their sins. I do look at Judas, though, in a little bit of a different light when seeing that, because remember, he doesn't know what Christ is about to do, that you're about to be saved through this way. And you can't go to the other side of basically saying, listen, you're supposed to punish me, because the priests, because you just made the deal with those people. So what do? You have this materialism, and the best you can think of is, fine, I'll throw it on the temple floor, right? because this is
Yep.
the one place where God's supposed to be dwelling, and I'm going to let him know materialism. I don't want this anymore. I made a bad boo-boo. Now, I'm not saying what he did afterwards was right, but I do have to say, out of a lot of people in the world, imagine the weight and the strain of maybe finally understanding who you destroyed, not understanding what he was about to do, but who you turned in, who you betrayed. That dude, that's putting that on your conscience. You
Yeah.
don't know 3 days ahead, 72 hours, what's going to happen. So the best you
And
can think of is, I can't go back to the fellow disciples. They'll kill me. I can't. The priests are probably going to put a hit out on me because I
mhm.
know too much. I'm
Enough
Yeah,
just
to
because I
where,
saying.
worked for
I
them.
mean, and meanwhile, some other guys just out denying that he even knew him, and he's in worse
Yeah.
trouble.
Yeah. Well, he's like, yeah, I did know him. Wow, that's really good, Matt. That's really good. He did know him, and he accepted money for that. And then Peter's over here denying him.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. Good. Good stuff.
it's crazy.
Anyway, let's get it
It's
going.
like,
Yeah, yeah. I kind of wanted to take a break from all the heavy stuff, if that's okay with you guys.
Oh yeah. Oh
Or a
yeah.
little bit bring up okay, what am I gonna hit now?
oh yeah, I remember you were talking about this last time. Lincoln.
Yeah, I thought I would
Nice.
update it a little bit. I had a few more slides. Some of them I don't have to read the whole page, just gonna give you a little bit of a highlight of what I was reading, piecing things together. I know there's a libertarian homeschooler on Instagram, and she's over here saying that Lincoln, he was a dictator, blah, 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 blah. Look at this book. And I'm like, well, have you considered the other aspect that the Rothschilds really did not like him? And I'm recommending all these other books. She only wanted to hear it from her perspective inside. I'm over here going, there's a lot more to be seen, especially when you start breaking this down. You'll start understanding the influences of the KKK. You'll start understanding a little bit more just in general that the Civil War had a lot of little nuances of big events that we're familiar with, but there was things going on behind the scenes that were not talked about too much
We
because I dig into those books.
I want to say this is actually pretty awesome that you're bringing this up right now because we did an episode on like Lincoln's assassination, but I kept like, dude, I didn't know where to look to find this type of stuff. It kept like coming across it, but I didn't know how to stay on that trail, but we knew it was like he went over and had like the co-conspirators or people who would vote against him arrested and things like that. It's like, well, yeah, that guy is shot in the head, bro. But I knew there was this stuff, so that's cool that we're getting to it.
He is a very controversial figure. I would give him maybe about an 85 out of 100. Of I think 15%. Yeah, you kind of went a little bit too far. However, it was a time of war. We never really had a civil war before. So is that a grounds for habeas corpus? I would think so, because in a sense, if you got these people lurking around, you don't know if someone's going to walk into the White House and freaking pop you, especially during a time of war.
It's fair.
Again, it is if I don't support government, but I'm saying out of all the presidents, he's kind of one where I've read a lot of his lesser known biographies or people who've written some stuff on the lesser known stories. And from what I've pieced together, very tortured man. A lot of people don't know about, but we can discuss as we keep going. I know he was not pro-war, as a lot of people seem to be indicating in comments. A Mexican-American War. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh yeah.
1840s,
Oh,
46
well,
to
I
48.
remember the Alamo.
Yeah. This is the stuff that led up to it. And we did instigate it. Basically what Polk was promising, if you elect me, I will double basically the size of America, because I will basically, bring in Texas, Colorado, all this good stuff. Well, bad, stealing it, but doing it through the right means, at least according to him. And so what he did, he sent a cavalry contingent to ride very close to a Mexican fort. And of course, the Mexican fort is seeing a foreign force parading very close to where one of their forts are. So of course they start opening fire and they kill a couple of Americans. And a false flag event, they weaponized this over in Washington. They said American blood, patriots have been spilt. We need to go over there and let them know that we do not tolerate this for our American boys. Classic. We never really have changed our MO. It's the same.
Man, we are good at that game, though, aren't we?
Every time I look into this, I'm like, we've never been invaded. We always have either known about it ahead of time or we instigated it.
I'm pretty sure like we basically have like made it happen every single
Yeah.
time. Like
America
every
has its
single one.
own biggest body count.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're just deflecting saying it was somebody else when the history books. It's, again, the victor writes the history.
Mm-hmm.
But what Polk said, Mexico had invaded our territory and shed the blood of our fellow citizens on our soil. And Lincoln, as was he a senator, whatever at that time, congressman, he said Polk was trying to prove, quote unquote, by telling the truth that he could not prove by telling the whole truth. That was January 12th of 1848. Now everybody said, Lincoln, what the hell's wrong with you? You're unpatriotic, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, no, we just didn't tell the whole truth to the American populace that we're the ones that instigated the whole damn thing. And I think that's a lying. We're not being full transparent. And everybody's
Right.
like, okay, you just
You're
committed
just
political
yeah, you're
suicide.
telling them that they did shoot him, not why.
Right.
Yeah.
Or how it all actually
Yeah.
went down. It's like, well, it was a home invasion, but the front door was unlocked. It doesn't mean you go in if it's unlocked and it's not your house.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they shot the guy, and he's technically the victim because he wasn't holding a gun when he went into the house. Hey, do you see what, like, this is the
Right.
stupidity
They didn't mean
of
any
the
harm
argument.
by marching the army
Man.
by him.
Yeah.
That sounds like California.
Yeah.
Sounds like Connecticut, dude. If you shoot somebody in the state of Connecticut in your house, unless that person was blocking your only means of exit, then you're going to jail or you're going to get arrested. Why? Because you had a means of escape, and instead of doing that, you literally premeditated manslaughter and shot this person. I'm like, but
What
he's
if they
in
kill
my
you
house.
Yeah, what if they kill you while you're trying to run out?
Yeah,
Right.
prove my speed.
No, this is where I'm over here like, you know what? I'll help you hide the body. I'll get a bag of potato chips, bring a playlist. I won't say anything.
Yeah.
I
Why?
hit
Because
fight
I'm
or
that kind of
flight
friend.
and I accidentally chose fight.
Right.
Okay, my bad.
Like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be like the opossum when you corner him and freaking claw the basketball as you roll it towards him because you thought it'd be fun. I'm going to be like, yeah, you know what? You're going to come pick me up. I'll freaking return fire. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. So this was a speech by a gentleman by the name of Myron Fagan, 1967, and he was doing a whole thing of the Illuminati. You can still find this on YouTube. Even typing it into Facebook, folks, if you wanted to put it in the search bar, some people have made visual representation of what he is indicating here. Back in 1967, he didn't piece together the secret group that he's going to be inferring. That is what we're going to be unwrapping today. I just wanted to play this clip because it is relevant to what we're going to be chatting about.
Our Civil War. The earlier masterminds had ever overlooked. Over here as far back as the Revolutionary War. But George Washington was more than a match for them. It was during the Civil War that the conspirators launched their first concrete efforts. We know that Judah Benjamin, chief advisor of Jefferson Davis, was a Rothschild agent. We also know that there were Rothschild agents planted in Abraham Lincoln's cabinet who tried to sell him into a financial dealing with the House of Rothschild. But old Abe saw through the scheme and bluntly rejected it, thereby incurring the undying enmity of the Rothschilds, exactly as the Russian Tsar did when he torpedoed their first League of Nations at the Congress in Vienna. Investigation of the assassination of Lincoln revealed that the assassin, Booth, was a member of a secret conspiratorial group. Because there were a number of highly important government officials involved, the name of the group was never revealed, and it became a mystery, exactly as the assassination of Jack Kennedy still is a mystery. The ending of the Civil War destroyed, temporarily, all chances of the House of Rothschild to get a clutch on our money system, such as they had acquired in Britain and other nations in Europe. I say temporarily because the Rothschilds and the masterminds of the conspiracy never quit. So they had to start from scratch, but they lost no time in getting started. Shortly after the Civil War, a young immigrant who called himself Jacob H. Schiff, arrived in New York. Jacob was a young man with a mission for the House of Rothschild. Jacob was the son of a rabbi, born in one of Rothschild's houses in Frankfurt, Germany. I won't go deeply into his background. The important point is that Rothschild recognized in him not only a potential money wizard, but more important, he also saw the latent Machiavellian qualities in Jacob that could, as it did, make him an invaluable functionary in the great one-world conspiracy. After a comparatively brief training period in the Rothschilds' London bank, Jacob left for America with instructions to buy into a banking house, which was to be the springboard to acquire control of the money system of the United States. Actually, Jacob came here to carry out 4 specific assignments. Number 1, and most important, was to acquire control of America's money system. Number 2, find desirable men.
We can't hear it no more.
Can you hear it?
No, once
No.
it started like these riots.
Yeah, of course. I said the next one is basically start riots between, or racial divisions between whites and blacks, and then finally is to annihilate the Christians and the atheists. Going into the letter of Mazzini, the Jacob Schiff guy. Fun fact: he was the guy that helped distribute the Schofield Bible, which promotes Zionism and dispensationalism for America.
Hmm.
That's the same guy.
That's the one in all the hotels.
Yes, he's the one that helped put that all into the hotels. I think before the the Gideon Bible, quote unquote. But yeah, he was the help to distribute all of that. So I was kind of curious again. He doesn't. I would recommend when he's talking about like Washington and all this stuff. No, look up Rulers of Evil People by Tupper Saucy. That will help debunk that heavily, explaining the Jesuit control and playing Masons like puppets for creating America to be what I would personally dub as the capital for the Antichrist. But the secret group he is inferring, he didn't have a name, I don't think, at that time, but it was the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Yep.
Now, as you can see, they have a little bit of that potpourri hat going on here. Little Pope of Tammuz hat. Again, that means there's a Jesuit affiliated with these guys. This is an interesting book. It's a little bit heavy read for some people. If you're kind of like, I just kind of want to get to the fun history part. It's a little bit thick, but it's worth it if you kind of want to start breaking into the forerunners of the KKK. This is a good book to pick up. But the Knights of the Golden Circle, you can see, have a very similar emblem to another particular group that we're very familiar with.
Yeah. In the 40s, we're talking.
Yeah, 1940s, and this is 1865. This is their little pendant, so not too much has changed.
I mean, you just cut some of the stuff out. I mean, it's kind of yeah.
It's roughly the same thing. It's again Mason Jesuit, and we started putting medals. I think on American uniforms. It started in the Civil War. We also the first time we started using caskets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're like, that's interesting because again, they never tell us that stuff in the good old history book. So what was the Knights of the Golden Circle objective? Well, they kind of wanted to expand a little bit further than the 13 states that rebelled. They wanted to have an empire that extended all the way from the Carolinas to Virginia, Florida, all the way down to Arizona, and to a little bit of Mexico, all the Mexican territory. They wanted to take all these small countries like Guatemala and all that stuff. And they also were having plans to basically filibuster Cuba. So the whole thing in the 1960s, Bay of Pigs, it has literally been over 100 years that they've been wanting to take that place.
What's with Cuba?
Makes you wonder. I don't know. I think there's got to be more than cane sugar here because I understand it's lucrative. Okay, cool, but there's got to be something more there, dude. But
Involving
as well,
Canada.
hmm?
Involving Canada.
Yeah, man. They got the maple syrup. It's nothing personal.
Oh, we want Canada so bad right now.
But as well, they wanted the Dominican, and they also wanted Haiti. Now, part of the thing that I was finding interesting, have you ever watched the oh, what is the name of that movie? It was Ronald Reagan, incredibly, incredibly young, and Errol Flynn. And basically, it's the story of all the guys prior to the Civil War. You had like Custer, you had Sherman, and all these guys are being played by Hollywood actors, and they're going up against John Brown as they're placed in the Kansas territories. Now, what was going on to prompt this movement is that the South heard about the Haiti rebellion. The Haitians rebelled against the plantation owners, and they killed every man, woman, and child, and basically became their own independent island.
Wow.
So the South was going, oh, did you just see that? Yeah, okay, what happens if they do that down here? Well, don't worry, we'll form some sort of committee, a secret group, organization, and we'll make sure that this never happens. Well, we're going to be talking about some things because I read another book and it filled in a lot of blanks, and that's what we're going to be adding to this today. So, how do we define it, what their organization stood for? Well, from this clip from that book I just showed, indeed, the KJC, Knights of the Golden Circle, could not have induced the secession of Texas without favorable coverage from the press, such as a piece written in a San Antonio Herald that ran on the front page of the Dallas Herald just a few days before the secession election titled Order of the Knights of the Golden Circle, its objectives, aims, and principles. The KJC is a Southern institution, the contracting power of the Immigrant Aid and Wide Awake Societies of the North. It is the lawful company based on Christian principles looking to winning this empire for the South. It recognizes and propagates slavery as a divine institution, wisely established by Jehovah himself and fraught with all the elements of social, moral, and political good to the Negro, and conducive to the best interests of our country. And calculates the doctrines of the manifest destiny and teaches the star of the empire is southward, hence Texas. It would show an outlet for the free Negro population of the southern states. It would gain control of the Gulf of Mexico and a vast trade thereof. It would keep lands peculiarly adapted to our system of labor out of the hands of the abolition majority of the North. It would cultivate the chivalric spirit of our people and tie them together in a bond of brotherhood. It would give peace and protection to society to help elevate and ennoble our race. It would protect the weak and punish the bad. It would revive in our midst the days of chivalry and our same time furnish the South with a complete and effective military system.
What year was this written?
This was back in, I think, the 1840s, 1850s, if I'm not mistaken. Somewhere within that time frame is when these guys started getting to going.
Was this just a
So I'm
really
just wondering, like, what San Antonio was at that time, because I mean, between what is it, like 18, geez, even 1800 and like what, 1865, it was under six different countries. So I mean,
yeah,
I think it was one of the states at that time.
'cause it was
Antonio.
either that or the Republic of Texas.
true.
Might have been the Republic of Texas at that time. Pa-pa-pa-pa.
Well, this is right at
Okay,
the
so the San
Alamo time.
Antonio Herald was renamed that in 1855. So this had to have been probably post. So maybe 56, 57, 58, I would
Okay.
imagine.
Okay. Just trying to get context on where we're at in
Yep,
this.
yep.
It seemed like it was a really long way to say that they wanted to take the land to kick the black people out, and that would solve their problems.
As well,
It was like, what?
Native Americans. There was one guy who literally put as his job of occupation for when he was filing for taxes, engine killer. Literally his occupation. I'm like,
Yeah.
are you what, dude? But apparently this was acceptable. So,
Yeah.
but needless to say, I think a few of us have seen a lot of this stuff with John Wilkes Booth with doing the Masonic, hand in the coat. If you're looking for a book that really covers a lot of stuff that nobody really covers too much about,
Why did
John
the
Wilkes
officers do that? I feel like that was a military officer thing to always do
it
that.
means they're a Mason. It has nothing to do with being a an officer. It's just a little bit of a nod. The hidden hand of Freemasonry is basically what it is. Cloaks and daggers, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say they have like I read a book called The Hidden Hand Interviews, and it talks about it being like Masonic and tied back to original Illuminati stuff and weird. The guy went on like a weird tangent too with like Galactic Federation type stuff, and I was like, okay. But
Well, again, going beyond the veil is another indication for that. So that's kind of a little bit of a thing. The very name of God in Turkey, which is where Nimrod stems from, El means hand. So the
yeah,
hand of God, your hand is going beyond the veil when you're traveling through all this stuff. Just saying, dude, this is what they believe, not what I believe. But star traveling, astrology, Astaroth, yeah, it
yep.
goes into all that star stuff. This is what they believe. But anyways, this book highly recommend. Lawrence Abel. One thing I did find very interesting in comparison to all the stuff that I've read, he was friends with the vice president, at least Lincoln's second vice president. What's his name? Andrew Johnson. And fun fact, when I was reading in this book, that's not touched a lot of other stuff. He actually set up Vice President Andrew Johnson with one of his mistresses. And this mistress particularly wrote Wilkes a note basically saying, I'll let you do anything to me, sexually speaking. So he took that with oh, really? What if I put some guy in your room, you leave the door partly ajar, I'll send one of my guys over and we'll dispose of him. Now, and all reading all this culminated stuff, Andrew Johnson would not have been able to come forward and being like, I was in proximity of a woman who's very close to Booth and having a liaison the night the president was shot.
Yeah,
That would
yeah.
not be good press, especially since I'm taking the position of president. So he lied and said he was under intoxication the night of the assassination, which was an outright lie, even though he did have a reputation. Even during the inauguration of Lincoln's second term in office, he was completely plastered. So it was a excuse of, oh, yeah, that sounds typical. But when you look into why he really said that, you're like, oh.
Nobody believes, too, that they sent out all these people to go make, there were multiple hits that were supposed to happen. And it's like they walked in on him. That was the story. They walked in, saw he was drunk and went, we don't need to worry about him. No,
that doesn't
they
help
would have
your
shot
case
him
either if you're like, oh, well, he was quite the drinker. Like, okay, so he was used to drinking.
Yeah. So he's got a tolerance.
Yeah, and that's what you're saying to me is, yeah, you should remember.
At this point.
Yeah.
No,
that's that cowboy.
Then there's another thing I was reading is that even before Lincoln basically kicked the bucket, Andrew Johnson and whatever the judge at the time, they basically walked right past the house where Lincoln was at. Didn't even bother to give their condolences, as it were, and they were immediately already swearing him in. I was like, you do. Yes, I think he did know a little bit what was going on. To what extent, I don't know, because again, apparently Booth wanted him dead. But then they're like, I guess we can work with this anyways. As well, come to find out, I did not know John Wilkes Booth had he was engaged. And when they found his body, some of the stuff that was on there, one was his journal. So he had a candle, I think some kind of medallion that was Catholic affiliated, which he was not raised Catholic. So it gives you a little bit of you get some Jesuit ties there, buddy.
Yeah.
Don't know. All I'm saying is the stuff that they found on his person when they basically went through his remains is very interesting.
You don't get to assassinate a president in that way with like that much planning without being involved.
Is that our dude we interviewed?
Oh shit! It does look like.
It looks like him.
Zachary King. You know who we're talking about?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's ex-Satanist. But anyway, continue. He looks like Albert Pike.
My uncle. Uncle, cousin,
crazy.
Something like that. I'm related to Zebulon Montgomery Pike, who discovered Pikes Peak, Colorado, near you guys.
Yeah,
that's
close.
Yeah, that's an uncle of mine. And then I looked up. I said, "Is Zebulon Pike related to Albert Pike?" And yes, they are. So somewhere along the line, I am related to this guy. So I'm
Doesn't
exposing
surprise me.
him. Yeah, I know,
Loud.
right? Dude, when I was in college, I there's the professor, and he was talking about what was he talking about? He was talking about Aaron Burr and that whole thing where he was trying to split the union. And so when I told him I was related to Zebulon Pike, he goes, "Do you know anything about his hand and possibly being a double agent to split the American Empire?" And I go, "It's a family secret." And the whole class is just looking at me like, "Oh, this should be interesting."
That's good. I
I've
got
actually read enough now, dude. I could probably write a small little book on connecting those dots with Aaron Burr and all this stuff. If I had more time, dude, I would love
in
it.
a little tourist town where they like make shirts and all this. I keep forgetting to give it to him, but I found Matt. They only had his size, but it said like Burr was right. And then the back said like maybe he deserved it. I was like, this is your hoodie.
Yeah, he was the grandson of Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hand of an Angry God. I was like, this is a really small world. Everybody knew everybody. Um, so, anyways, this is Albert Pike. He had predicted with Mazzini, the guy who was in charge of the European equivalent of the Masons. He said the First World War must be brought about in order to permit the Illuminati to overthrow the power of the czars in Russia and making that country a fortress of atheistic communism. So
Atheistic
that this is
communism.
uh-huh. And communism, when you look into Marx, a book that would be great on connecting that, both Paul Kengor's The Devil and Karl Marx will explain how communism started infiltrating American universities back in the 1920s. To find out the origins connecting to the Jewish individuals, read Solving the Mystery of Babylon the Great by
Okay.
Edward Hendrie, Hendrie. Phenomenal book. You also find out Marx's real name. It was like Moses Levi Mordecai Levi, something like that. Levi Mordecai. Yeah, he's a really long name. But it basically explaining how he was commissioned to create this. So this was back in the 1850s. Darwin was around the 1850s. I just recently connected the guy who is the grandfather of the father of transhumanism, Julian Huxley. Um, what was his name? There's another Huxley, but he basically coined the term agnostic. I
Uh
was he was
Aldous
buddies with Darwin.
Huxley, isn't it?
No, Aldous was his brother.
Okay.
This was their grandfather. He was nicknamed Darwin's Bulldog. Just literally Googling that should give
Okay.
you the position of finding who that individual. But he coined the term agnostic. I just found that interesting that both in the 1850s, Darwin and Marxism were very prominent things. They were not some fringe group. They were planting this out for a reason, and they need a couple decades to get things to gain traction, as it were. Um,
It has to grasp with like communism though, right? You're already kind of worthless to it. So why would you have like God or something else above it, right? You'd be like, it doesn't matter.
Communism is basically usury on steroids, but it's making it palatable for the Gentile to basically comprehend and be like, oh, yeah, this sounds like a great thing because if we're all helping each other, but who's exploiting those who are telling you this is going to be a system that helps everybody with the community, right?
Yeah.
Elon Musk, this is a terrifying thing. And yeah, we said this last time. AI will provide universal income for all.
Yeah.
So digital communism. So you're just going to tell me we're going to go Bitcoin crazy and everybody's just going to basically, share around with this, that, and the
Hmm.
other thing. The only thing you have to do to log into your bank is give away your thumbprint and your retina scanner.
Look at the Genius Act they just passed. That's
Uh,
literally
what was in that?
it's like the regulation of stable coins is what they call it. But it literally it's like, okay, you guys can trade your cryptos, right? Your fake money,
Yeah.
but as long as you let like somebody allowed make sure that there's real money to back it and we're in charge of it. So now the government has charge of like all the back. It's literally money communism, like you said.
Yeah, like I mean, it's still a default currency, right, around the
Hmm.
world. Like even if you wanted to go from pesos to yens, you got to go to dollars first, right?
Yep.
It's all
Right. And then it's
based on
just
the
like how the
dollar.
government's bailing out big banks when they go under. It's the same equivalent, but now we're going to do it for a citizen, right? Don't worry. Your bank account's empty. It's fine. Or your social credit score. You turn in your neighbor, and we'll give you a 20,000 Bitcoin bounty.
Well, those people
right?
get to make the rules now too,
Just
under
wait.
the Genius Act.
Just
Yeah,
both of you guys, just wait. That's how I'm getting my robot. Turning you both in.
yeah.
This guy.
He's
Gotta
like,
get rid of him, man. He's gonna turn
I
us
know,
in.
I know. First a robot, now he wants to turn us in.
That's
Come on,
how I'm
man.
gonna get the robot.
Albert Pike also said that the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agenter or of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and the political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Now, if you're going by a couple other clips I've been recently seeing, they actually want Israel to get nuked. At least a decent portion, because they only want 7,000 of the top blood families to basically own the land. And what they want to pitch is basically World War III will happen. Like, it'll be in 12 minutes, then it'll be it. And it'll get rid of a good chunk of the population. And it's basically going to be, we're all going after Islam. Then suddenly it's going to be, wait a minute. Why am I attacking you when we both realize that Israel is the real enemy? And everybody turns their guns on them. Right?
Yep.
Now, for the Christian, again, he said we will destroy the atheists and the nihilists, and we also destroy Christianity. Now, if you have Christians that are literally going to be like, there was no rapture, Armageddon happened. Christ should have returned before all of this. I just lost most of my family. I lost all my money. I lost all of this. What are you
First
going
the
to
big vacuum.
Right. You're going to literally be like in a lurch of what the hell? What am I supposed to do from here? And
Yep.
they're going to accept the. So in a sense, yes, you do destroy Christianity because what was their focus? The only thing they set their minds on things above was get me out of here before things get really bad.
Mhm.
For the most part, like we were saying pre-show, it's materialism. What can I get before I leave?
Yeah.
Right?
Woe to those.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And that's what you want. You want materialism. Now, are you gentlemen familiar with Mr. John Brown?
No,
No? What about you,
I
Matt?
don't think so.
I know a guy named John Brown, but it's not that guy. He's much younger.
Not that guy. Yeah, he looks a little bit. And this is a quote. I found it interesting. It was on an Anarchy page, but then I was looking a little bit more into John Brown and this book I was reading, and I was like, "Oh, controlled opposition." But I acknowledge no master in human form. Okay, sounds good, but who are you? Who are you? Now, the abolitionists, what I was finding interesting in this book, Curse of Canaan by Eustace Mullins, and that is Eustace, Mullins, as it sounds. I read it with a little bit of a grain of salt. However, there's a lot of stuff where he was filling in blanks of like, I don't want to say yes, but dang it all, it actually does make sense what you're pointing out because it matches with the other stuff I've read succinctly, perfectly. It's like that missing puzzle piece. You're like, whenever I find it, I'll finish the puzzle. And when I did, this is the stuff that came out of it. So the Medicis, the Medici family, the people who really control the potpourri and all this stuff, and the New England religion, quite simply, was the latest modern heresy preached against the people of Shem. Allegedly, this is, they really don't like us because, we get the bad genes, we're the goy.
Yeah.
Cult directed by Reverend William Channing. One of his principal assistants was a teacher named John Brown, the son of an infamous revolutionary, who was to die on the gallows of the insurrection of Harper's Ferry. Now, that movie I was inferring before, that when they were storming Harper's Ferry, it was conducted by Mr. John Brown. His goal, he was going to take Harper's Ferry, which was an armament for the U.S. military, take all the guns, go through the South, and start arming and equipping the slaves to start a rebellion through the South. Now, considering he is controlled opposition and the abolitionist movement actually was heavily, when I say abolitionist, it doesn't mean every single person who basically is like, oh, that sounds like a great thing. So like if we were talking about Charlie Kirk, let's take this for a modern example. And he's saying he's against abortion. Does that mean every person that comes in there and is like, oh, great, this is a guy that's against abortion? That's absolutely cool. Like, that's a Christian value. We're going to support Charlie Kirk, right? It's the same mentality. So everybody who
Hmm.
jumps on this abolitionist thing doesn't necessarily mean they're bad, or it's a bad premise. The thing is, they were weaponizing it because what are you going to do if you storm Harper's Ferry? If you
Yeah.
get through with it, you're going to get a whole bunch of recruits for the Knights of the Golden Circle, right? And
Hmm.
if you do manage to do that, what are you going to have to do? You're going to have to put down all the slaves. So one way or the other, it's a win-win. If he gets
Hmm.
captured, doesn't get captured, right? Create the chaos. Let's see what unravels. Order through chaos.
Well,
It's a beautiful thing, dude. It's like if we get
he
caught, we have full deniability. But in the greater scheme of things, this will go in the history books, and we'll utilize this for our own ends.
he's I remember this guy now. Like Robert E. Lee caught him in the
Mm-hmm.
Harper's Fair, right? They caught him, but he reminds me of Leonardo DiCaprio in Django,
Yes,
right? He goes around and like kills the slave owners and the settlers and shit like that. That's who John Brown was. That's why I
correct.
remember.
And one of the first guys him and his sons took out, they cut him up with a cutlass, and it was in the Kansas territory. Now, what I found interesting about that, why they call it Bleeding Kansas, right? But Kansas was very close. Knights of the Golden Circle ran from Texas all the way up into Kansas.
Hmm.
That was where their thing was. And I said, John Brown took out a random guy, right? For me, I was beginning to wonder, was he possibly going to war against the Knights of the Golden Circle? Because he's doing exactly what I told you they feared is the Haiti Rebellion. If they armed all the slaves, they're going to kill everybody in the South. And he wants to storm Harper's Ferry, Virginia, doing exactly the thing that they hate or they didn't want to have happen. I just found it interesting. I don't have solid proof to pinpoint, but Your Honor, if I'm presenting a case of allegedly, there's a plausible cause here of my, not the client of as the prosecutor. I'm just saying there's a plausible case here to be made that he had motive to do this, and or it might be extenuating circumstances worth considering. I'll
The
leave it up to.
I just Googled it. The Potawatomi Massacre in Kansas. He killed 5 pro-slavery settlers and believed it was divine justice, is what he said.
Which again, as a Christian, we do not
I
condone.
didn't even I didn't even know that was a thing.
Mhm.
No.
And fun fact, when I think it was actually this book, John Wilkes Booth actually went and met him, and he was there and present for his execution. And yeah, so John Wilkes Booth basically he was walking around in Virginia doing his acting gig, and there was basically an immediate we need a militia Minutemen because we have John Brown. We have him locked up. He just tried to storm Harper's Ferry to release all the slaves. We need
Yeah.
like a militiaman. We need militiamen. All right, any volunteers? Because if he escapes or like the South, his abolitionist friends, they let him go. He'll become a martyr for their cause and all this stuff. So we need a lot of guys to come down here. And without skipping a beat, without putting in his 2 weeks notice, he hops on the train, doesn't even have a uniform, says, I just want to go down there. I want to volunteer. And he got a chance and he talked with John Brown. He witnessed the death. And one of the things that he said after he saw this says, if I ever have a situation like this, I'm not going to go out like that. He was very taken aback by watching a man hang, especially John Brown.
Um, if Booths was involved and John Brown was after Knights of the Golden Circle,
Mhm.
maybe that's why Booth was there because they were like, hey, go make sure this guy actually gets hung.
Hits home. Maybe he was a messenger, and that's something that they don't cover. Maybe it
Hmm.
honestly was at that time, though, from what I'm reading, I would throw out a little bit of a conjecture that he wasn't recruited just at that time. That's just my 2 cents from what I have been reading. I could be wrong. I will throw that out as a possibility. Um, but even then, John Brown was not afraid about dying. So the mission was completed, whether, most people don't even know about him. But what did
Yeah.
we get through all of this? It instigated a lot of the forerunning of the Civil War.
Yep. Yeah. Forget
So,
forget talking. Let's just go to violence.
right, right.
Yeah.
So he's taking out entire families. John Brown's orgy of terrorism. The Cabot Bank later provided 57,000 for John Brown's military expenses. So he was being funded, a full armed funded terrorist. Literally, that's what it is. It's
Oh,
trying to establish order through fear
Does
tactics,
bank
right?
mean used, like use own it back in those days too?
Was that you? What beginning
Was
part?
were banks like still owned by the U's back in those days too?
Yes,
I
that's
was
what we're
wondering
trying to
that.
So
That's a
I
solve.
good
was like,
question.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
because we had that clip where he was talking about. I'm going to be explaining how that all
Hmm.
connects to modern money
Okay.
stuff,
gotcha.
and I'll
I
throw out
heard
more
it in that clip
recommendations.
too. Yeah, I heard
It's
that
like
clip and I
when
was
I
like,
see bank, I just see that word now. I'm
Thank
just
you.
kind of
Well, a
the
book
words
you
are
might like.
interchangeable.
A book you might like on that, or both of you, Usury, and that's Usury in Christendom by Michael Hoffman, and that'll explain the money lenders that Christ was flipping the tables over in the temple, explaining out throughout history, people have given quotes that one of the worst crimes of all of humanity is usury, charging interest on money loans. The U's don't do that to themselves; they only do
yep.
that to employ, but they have flipped empires by doing that. And in Thessalonians, it says that part of the elements of whatever the thing of the beast is already here. What is that? Coinage, materialism, money, security, right? Whatever you
Yeah.
put in your bank, right? You're more
Just,
concerned about what you put in your bank as opposed to what you let go through your mind.
yeah, the thing we talked about at the beginning, the stuff that cost Jesus his life.
Thank you. Yes.
Hmm.
So that's literally the epitome of spiritual, or you want monetary, right? Which when push comes to shove, like the rich man, when he comes to approach him, he says, "Well, I've already been obeying all your laws, but much more could I possibly do? Can you get rid of your coins?"
Yeah.
Had to walk
Nope.
away. Had to walk away. And again, maybe he could even said, "You don't have to get rid of all of it, but if you could get rid of 90%, right?"
Yep.
Again, the guy answered the question by walking away because he's basically said, "I wouldn't be able to even get rid of any of it."
No, you can't get rid of none of it.
Right. And that's
Um,
where, in contrast, it's like I'm willing to give up family, friends, and finances. Why? Because the truth is most important. Your soul. I care more about your soul than I do about your fleshly experience. Like, come on,
yeah.
like eternity's talking here.
Yeah. Yeah. You can eat ramen every night rather than In-N-Out burger or something, it's fine.
This reminded me of my college days.
um,
Um,
Speaking of numbers, $57,000 would roughly be $2 million in 1827 to finance a military.
I was just gonna
what about
ask that.
1850s? I think is when John Brown was active.
Okay, let me see here.
That's got to be probably 2.5, maybe 2.3.
It's pretty close, I bet. That's Google's still good for transferring numbers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
In 1850, actually, it's only roughly 1.925.
But even
Oh
still,
my.
back in that day, that's not
Yeah,
too
that's
bad.
a lot of
Let's say
money.
let's say you have 100, 200 guys riding around with you, and not everybody's on a salary. They're just give me a gun, give me some food,
Mm-hmm.
because you believe in the cause. That's the beauty
$50.
of, yeah, right. Here we'll give you some money once in a while to go into town. But again, if you're a strict, ardent guy like he was, I think he ran a pretty tight ship, right? Because you can't afford loose lips. Loose lips sink ships,
Yes,
all that sort of thing. So the
especially in
counterbank,
assassinations.
yeah. There is no record that it was ever repaid or that any attempt was made to collect it. It was a donation. Other financial supporters of John Brown's included John Murray Forbes, a wealthy railroad builder. His mother was a Perkins, who served on the Republican National Committee. Between 1827 and 1843, actually, maybe you're right, maybe it was 40s, the plans of the conspirators received a temporary setback with the emergence of the anti-Masonic Party as a national force. Now, are you familiar with the Captain Morgan scandal in New York?
No, only the
So, roughly
booze.
around
Yeah.
1827, 1826, something around this time frame. You can do a quick little Google peruse. This guy basically wrote a book. He was a former Mason, tries to expose everything that was going on in the Masonic lodges. Of course, you're not supposed to do that. So basically, he was brought to a jail. A whole bunch of guys break in. The sheriff either was not there or he basically turned him over basically for nothing, doesn't put up any resistance. They took him out in the middle of the night and he was executed. Allegedly. He just
Oh
disappeared.
shit.
Nobody knows where he went,
He
but
killed himself.
yeah, right, he Epstein himself. Yes, so basically that prompted a whole bunch of people going, okay, so if these this society is this ruthless, willing to kill people, and they're in our politics. We need to get them out of here. So the anti-Masonic Party basically started to emerge. From its outset, the anti-Masonic Party was handicapped by its inability to penetrate the shroud of secrecy, which veiled every act of the conspirators. Try swinging at shadows. You don't really know what you're swinging at. Hence why I always tell people, what is Satanism? Well, it's paganism. Well, what is paganism? It's worshiping Satan? Yeah, okay, well, see, do you see this? You keep swinging at a branch, but you're not going for the roots. That's the problem, is that then you think, oh, I'm better than somebody else because I'm a Christian and Darwin's just silly. No, Darwin's part of the occult. What's their ulterior motive and agenda with where they're going with that, right? We have to think a little bit 3 steps ahead because they're manipulating a lot of people using this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm trying to encourage people to pick up some books. So without direct evidence of the conspiracy, which could be presented in court or laid before the people, they soon lost their popular support. In fact, they were soon infiltrated by the very conspirators whom they sought to expose, and were rendered impotent. Albert Pike later boasted the anti-Masonic Party actually was one of the greatest assistants to us. After its dissolution, Freemasonry never again faced any organized opposition in the entire United States. Those who mentioned this subject were quickly discredited as poor, overwrought fools or a paranoid know-nothings, and that was a party that Booth was originally a part of. Basically, they were very anti-Irish, if I remember correctly, or the Irish were part of it. Look into the Know-Nothing Party, but anyways, Booth was originally a member of that political party. And they were very known for basically hit and run tactics and then being like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't touch anything. What are you talking about, man?
Sounds kind of familiar today.
Yeah. Dude, nothing changes. There's just different terms.
During the Mexican-American War, I remember that they were very much on, like, they would straight up switch sides
Yes.
on us. Like, the Irish were pretty anti-American for sure.
Well, because they were, as I'm going to touch it here, they're very close to touching on with the Pope. Whatever the Pope says goes.
We were racist towards them, even though now they aren't even a race.
We did start it. Part of it is because of their paganism backgrounds. The second part is because of their Catholic background, right? So we kind of had a double whammy against them because, well, are you Catholic or are you pagan? Well, well, it's just Ireland in general, and that's why I don't like you. Sucks, but I don't know, dude.
At least we're honest.
Yeah, it got to be transparent. In most cases, they are quickly consigned to the nearest lunatic asylum in Elas Soviet communism's handling of its dissidents. Very similar to the Turning Point USA guy that just got arrested for asking questions about the Israeli-American flag.
That's in the big, beautiful bill. You can like remove funding and arrest religious dissidents now again. It's like, what?
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah, you can remove their funding and all that stuff if they don't agree with, if they're deemed like terrorism or, things like that.
Dude, this is why I can't join a 508 church, whatever thing, because some guy was making me the offer. I'm like, if I do that, though, I'm then becoming the thing that I'm telling people I don't want to be, because I don't want it to be funded by the ecclesia, not by, some charity, bank, government program thing, right?
Yep.
So, the Senate ordered John Brown's arrest in 1860. He had been a principal. Who were they? Samuel Howe and his wife, Julia, founded and edited fiery anti-slavery newspaper, The Commonwealth. Like so many of the Canaanite agitators in the United States, Gridley was descended from a Calvinist revolutionaries. His ancestor was an officer at Cromwell's army. John Ward of Gloucester was later fled to the United States to avoid punishment for his atrocities he committed under the banner of Cromwell. Franklin Benjamin Sanborn was a leading disciple of Reverend Parker and Ralph Waldo Emerson. The Senate ordered his arrest in 1860. He had been the principal agent for John Brown in New York since 1857. George Luther Stearns married into the Train family. He was the leader of the Free Soilers and the anti-slavery agitators in the state of Kansas. Their depredations gave rise to the term Bloody Kansas. He donated large sums of money to John Brown and bought a farm for the terrorist and his family. The chief agent for the Stearns in Kansas was Martin Conway. Originally from Baltimore, Conway was sent to Kansas to lead the Free State forces there. He later became the first congressman from Kansas. On October 11th, 1873, he fired 3 shots at Senator Pomeroy, wounding him. Conway was taken to St. Elizabeth's Hospital, where he was judged hopelessly insane, and he later died. And Harriet Beecher Stowe, that was the connection there, the lady who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. Yeah, all these people were controlled. But what do we hear in the highlights of America? Oh, look at them. They were being anti-slavery. That's such a good thing. But they were kind of, it's kind of like the incident where they're over here saying, quit poking the beehive. But then when they're filming, they're only filming the aspect of what happens post the fact that this person was poking the beehive.
Yeah. Well, you got stung.
Right. Like, what did you expect was going to happen? Yeah. Anyways. Constantine Gnostics, the Godfather, anti-slavery campaign of the United States. The abolitionist propaganda caused widespread resentment throughout the South, and on December 16th of 1835, the state of South Carolina issued a formal resolution on the matter, resolved that the formation of the abolitionist societies and the acts doings of such fanatics, calling themselves abolitionists and non-slaving holding states of this confederacy, are in direct violation of the obligations of the Compact of the Union, to social and incendiary to the extreme. In 1835, South Carolina used the term common until after the outcome of the Civil War. A confederacy of the states associated under the provisions of a compact, the Constitution of the United States, the abolitionist propaganda did not constitute a direct invasion of the southern states, and as such was an undeclared state of war. It was also, as the South Carolina resolution pointed out, a direct violation of the terms of the compact. Nevertheless, this violation of the terms of the compact, invasion of the propaganda, the invasion of propaganda continued until it was last followed by the direct military invasion of the Civil War. So basically, we're not going to actually pull guns, but we're going to get propaganda and pamphlets and this thing and that thing, and we're going to make people start thinking, so it's going to basically start problems.
Yep.
Especially some of the slaves who might hear some of this, and then they'll be like, get the idea, we got to run away. Now, is that a bad thing? No. However, when you're going against state rights, which is what they classically laid out for us so that this problem would ignite, and they would have a reason to have another war, right? They knew what they were doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Chief Justice Scott. Let's see. Can I skip that? Oh, yeah. After the Dred Scott decision, which was a trial that took place back in the 1850s, events moved rapidly toward the actual military confrontation, with the Knights of the Golden Circle taking their places throughout the southern states. John Brown then attacked Harper's Ferry, an incident which was intended to set off a slave uprising throughout the South. The anticipated popular revolution failed to materialize, and Brown was captured and then hanged. To this day, he remains a martyr in the Kabbalistic circles of New England. The fundamentalists and their ideological leader, Ralph Waldo Emerson, wrote, "He makes the gallows as glorious as the cross." Emerson later promoted John Brown as a new saint in the calendar.
He's kind of like a Charles Manson, too.
Somebody, this
like
writer
trying to
does
make all
not
this
like him.
helter-skelter happen, you know?
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they've called him a terrorist, and they say he's only liked by Kabbalistic practicers. It's like, what? He was just killing people who were owning slaves.
Allegedly, but it's kind of it does make you wonder, because when I did this episode with somebody else, he was talking about a lot of the secret societies that were funding what he was doing. So it does kind of make you wonder.
Yeah, the people who are funding him, right, follow the money. That's a good point.
Right. And that's all what I'm asking, especially when I'm asking people to.
So who is he really offing then when he's going and taking out these settlers and slave owners, right?
Right. It's like, technically, what is he doing? Is it so is it morally and ethically good to free slaves? Yes. Is it right for a Christian to draw a sword in order to get this accomplished?
No.
Well, but what did that prompt in the American mindset?
Yeah. What if there's a different motive?
Right. There's a moral reason to pick up a gun because we freed the slaves, blah, 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 blah. Now, I'm not, again, You can start hashing this all out, but doesn't this create a huge moral dilemma? If Christians should pick up a gun and not pick up a gun, when should we do it and when shouldn't we do it? And now we have it in our mindset was, well, it was a Republican cause and it was keeping the Union preserved, right? So it keeps cementing the aspect of, well, we were the good guys, right? Because we picked up the gun for the right thing. So then you start presenting something to somebody saying, well, communism is all obviously the antithesis of evil, right? But then we start to gradually ignore imperialism or the colonial imperialism of capitalism. How do we get food on our shelves? Have you heard of the Banana Wars?
Yeah.
That's what actually made Che Guevara become who he was. He saw the
Mhm.
horrors of what capitalists were doing, invading his country to make sure that they were able to extort bananas to put on American shelves. So if capitalism is doing this to your country, what are you going to look to? The opposite, right? Because you want to oppose that. So I'm not saying that this is, I'm not condoning, but I'm saying the elements of what we instigated. And now you're telling me we're the good guys because, well, when we pick up a gun, it's always for the right reasons.
Dude,
See,
did Jesus stop one of his disciples from killing the people arresting him because he didn't believe in murder or because he knew he had to fulfill prophecy? Or both, I guess.
I'd almost say a little bit of both. A lot of the early fathers, like Tertullian, is saying when Christ disarmed um, Peter, he basically took off the belt of all soldiers thereafter. And
Yep.
this was that was a lot of the stuff. Caesar and the Lamb is one book I was reading. Another one is by a guy called Cider, Christians in Military Service, and what's their thoughts on, what do you call it? Death penalty. Sorry, I was trying to get a but basically, what were the Christians' thoughts on that? And dude, after reading it, you're kind of convicted going, so the first 300 something years of Christianity, we were kind of, for the most part, yeah, we can't do this. And there's a lot of the acts of the military martyrs. It's a $200 book now. But a couple of the stuff that were inscribed in these books, a guy was like, I've been serving Caesar and Christ at the same time for the last 20 years, and I've been doing this wrong. Well, it's like, if you turn this in now, we're going to execute you. Yeah. And that's totally fine by me because I come to the conviction I can't do both of these things at the same time. Right?
Yep. Can't be
And I
lukewarm.
respect, right. And this is where some people don't understand when I'm posting all this stuff on Instagram. I'm going, yeah, I respect a veteran that can finally wake up and say, I was used. They used me, right? They gave me the wrong narrative. They told me I was doing it for this, and they lied to me. It's like a relationship. She was really bad influence in my life. Yeah, and it was a bad phase, but I learned a lot from it, and now I'm having my own kids, and I got a new relationship. It's healthy now. I
Mhm.
respect a veteran that can come to that conclusion because why? Governments use us. And I hate when people are being used and abused, right?
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. It's not from, oh, no. And then again, even the uniform. I don't respect uniforms. I respect per individual. Why? Because anybody can wear a uniform. I want to know who you are as a person, right?
Uniforms signify
Well, yeah,
authoritarianism, and I
conformity.
hate
You become
like
one, uni,
I hate
one.
authoritarianism. Like I think that's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
especially
especially
coming
with,
from men. Like men are the worst leaders. I like.
You got to
oh
get shit
boy, we're going to
done.
go down that route. But yes, as Day and the other observed and had reported, the slaves were leading very comfortable lives. After this tactic failed, it became obvious that the conspirators that were actual military invasion was the only solution to their campaign. The merchant bankers of New England, who were directly controlled by the Rothschilds, were now instructed to finance a military attack against the South. Their instrumentality was already well known, the terrorist John Brown. He was financed by a group famed as the Secret Six, which was composed of Thomas Wentworth Higgins, Reverend Theodore Parker, Dr. Samuel Gridley Howe, married to Julia Ward from a wealthy banking family who later wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and
Oh,
Franklin
wow.
Benjamin Sanborn, George Luther Stearns, and Garrett Smith. Smith had been John Brown's first financial angel. He was the son of the business partner of John Jacob Astor. Are you familiar with that kind of individual?
Everybody's somebody's friend, right?
You know what I'm saying? You see how small this group gets to, and you're just like, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So, the Masonic leader, his mother was a living East India Company in the opium trade, the British intelligence. His mother was a Livingston who was related to the Masonic leaders, Edward and Robert Livingston. Smith was the largest landowner in the state of New York, holding 1 million acres, which included land he had given to John Brown in 1848. Smith's total contribution to John Brown's military raids and other radical causes came to more than $8 million, a tremendous sum in those days. Reverend Theodore Parker typified the religious inspiration of the abolitionist movement. His mother was a Stearns, and he married into the Cabot family. He was educated at Harvard Divinity School. He became a leading transcendentalist and Congregationalist minister. He was always an activist in the Masonic tradition. In 1854, he had been indicted by a grand jury for the inciting an attack on a courthouse where a runaway slave was being detained. He was an active member of the Vigilance Committee, and he was a principal organizer of the Secret Six to finance John Brown's raids. He later became an expatriate living living in Europe, and he died in Florence, birthplace of secular humanism.
Hmm. That's crazy.
It's interesting, dude, because when you start digging into who knows who, and as you said, you start narrowing it down, you start going, this isn't that complex, but how come we don't talk about this in history? And how is all the authors I'm reading, they're an anti-Semitic author, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
Nothing was
no,
anti-Semitic here.
it's real history.
Yeah. That's crazy too. So that's like 3 different names of secret societies that have been funding this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he's clearly like, I don't know, this guy's like a John Wick or somebody.
Yeah. He's being funded to make cause chaos. We'll take care of the rest. And if you die for it, you'll be a martyr for the cause. Because again, remember,
Yep.
for them, if somebody dies, you end up becoming a monument to the cause. So we don't really care if you die because it makes the narrative look good, and people will never look at us as being the real key components. Who's moving the chess pieces? Like we talk about, there's a chess game, but who's moving them?
Can you imagine having hundreds of billions of dollars today? Like the the amount of control you would have. Like that's
I
Yeah.
think it was it Herschel or whatever. One of the Rothschilds once said, "It says I don't care about a nation's laws. Give me control of their money, and I'll basically be able to dictate what goes down." And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's pretty accurate, dude. Because again, when I say Mystery Babylon the Great, APAC acceptees are political prostitutes. Anybody who does lobbying, you're a political prostitute. Therefore, Whore of Babylon, you are selling yourself out to the highest bidder, which in our case is the Synagogue of Satan, SOS.
Yep.
And yet, when you mention that, you get picked up now at Turning Point USA rallies
Yeah.
for
Oh
simply
yeah.
saying, I'm against lobbying or emphasizing a particular country. Like, okay, so imagine if he was saying, how come I get in trouble for burning a Russian flag as opposed to the American flag? That's a great question, blah, blah, blah. And, go into. But you mentioned that tiny little, fingernail of a country. You
Yep.
mentioned that one? Oh, no, 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 no. And if you can't criticize somebody, you have to kind of ask yourself, is that the people who are in charge of our country?
He said the attack on the Liberty was like a conspiracy. Like I watched him go off on somebody for asking about that. You don't talk about that. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Charlie?
dude.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie is. I'm prepping a little video on getting his thing on dispensationalism because a lot of people are asking me questions, and I'm like, I got to put some verses out there. So when Charlie's going over there, and then he has another person at an event, it's like if you pick him up, that's going to start being persecution of a fellow Christian because they're literally citing the Bible. So maybe that will click some thing for some people finally of going, it's not
Yep.
anti-Semitic. He's literally quoting the Bible. Is the Bible anti-Semitic? I don't know. The Book of John could be because they feared the Jews. They feared the Jews. Look that
Yep.
up. It's a term. So the religious assault on the Constitution of the United States, the compact which had been drafted by the people of Shem in order to protect their religious freedom, now took a more ominous turn. In 1857, the financial leaders of the Canaanite powers, the House of Rothschild, assembled to celebrate the wedding of Lionel's daughter, Leonora. to her cousin Alphonse, son of James de Rothschild of Paris. At this gathering, Benjamin Disraeli, the Prime Minister of the UK at the time, said, "Under this roof are the heads of the family of Rothschilds, a name famous in every capital of Europe, in every division of the globe. If you like, we shall divide the United States into two parts, one for you, James, and one for you, Lionel. Napoleon shall do exactly in all that I shall advise him." And he's referring to Napoleon of France the Third. Which is interesting because one of the final battles of the Civil War is there was a what was the name of it? What was the name of the ship? It was a slave ship, and basically they went to France to basically provision the ship, fix it up, and all this stuff. And as they were trying to leave, or they were sitting in harbor, there was a U.S. Frigate. We're ready to blow you out of the water. And so they actually duked it out outside the harbor, like right outside the French waters, and they actually sunk the slave ship, stuff like that, which is fun because the Union had a whole bunch of ex-slaves that were actually part of the crew that ended up blowing down. The Alabama affair, that's what it was, the Alabama. And she was notorious. She was an iron, steel-clad ship, and she was running all the way to Asia, all the way to freaking Haiti and stuff. She was a blockade runner, and she was basically causing havoc on all the Union supply ships, right? So that was an interesting little thing, but that does connect with this Napoleon thing. It's not some fringe thing. There's a little bit of credibility. What were you doing in France? It's just neutral territory, brother. Oh, was it? Or was there a little something more? The war is finishing up. I need orders.
Dude, they have a ship. It brought 110 Africans to Alabama in 1860. And that it was banned in 1808, the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade. Mm-hmm. And it said they burned and sunk it to hide the evidence, and it was found again in 2018.
Interesting.
What's up with Alabama, huh?
Well, they have to make out with each other. Maybe they're doing it in tradition of the Rothschilds.
Weird.
But this does connect.
So you were banning imports at that point? Like it wasn't illegal to have slaves. It was just like you can't be importing.
So basically, the minute the Civil War was going on, Lincoln was like, "I've got to put a Union blockade to the South because how they make their money is through cotton, is from going to the UK and France and all the stuff with Europe." And so they basically were starting to get blockade runners, smugglers, or people who could, punch a little hole through, get something in. And that's what the Alabama was serving as. This is part of the significance when you heard of the Trent affair, where the two guys were about to be liaisons going to the UK, talking to them, saying, "Hey, we could use your help over here during the Civil War," because the UK already had a monopoly on steamships, and America was still using wooden ships. So if they actually got the UK to come on their side, well, needless to say, that blockade's going to go kabye. And they would have the incentive because we want cotton. We can't run our linen and cotton mills unless we have the supplies. So there's an incentive. So what some guy did in the Union, an admiral, he sees these two emissaries and he brought them in. Everybody's like, "This is great, awesome, blah, blah, blah." You nipped it right in the bud before it kicked off. But there's literally like no official proof that these guys were going to do that. Like, it's probably likely, yes, but you're not supposed to do that because they're not necessarily in uniform, right? So you don't really have a case here. So the fact that he sees them without, so basically this started a whole scandal. Lincoln apologized. He let them go because basically the UK was saying, "We're going to send steamships all over." And immediately they were ready to actually go to Canada. And they were also getting ready to send a whole bunch of another fleet down to the south. So what their plan was is they're basically going to bombard all the northern states, come down through Canada with their troops, and America would basically be fighting a war on two fronts. Now, in October of 1864, there was a cotton for contraband deal that Lincoln was making with the South. "We'll give you arms, we'll give you this, and all this stuff." Yeah. Because we need some of that linen up here in the factories because we were like 3-4 years into a war. And remember, October 1864. That's right before our second election, dude.
And winter, though, too. Like, though, too. Like, I mean, you're going to have dudes either dying from bullets or frostbite. I mean...
Lesser of
Mhm.
two evils, but
Yeah.
however, he's trying to keep it condensed. I want this only in my backyard, and I'm going to keep elaborating. Because if I try to expand this and this goes into a religious war, I'm screwed, right? And I don't want them to getting involved with European powers. So part of the reason he signed the Emancipation Proclamation is that France and the UK already signed anti-slavery laws. So if he signs this and basically says we're fighting for anti-slavery, and France and the UK join the South, what does that say for them? That's really bad press. Because it's like, well, wait a minute. Why are we supporting the side that we already said that that's a bad thing in our country? So
Yep.
what he did with that, it was not necessarily like, you remember when you left that quote, if I could eliminate if I didn't have to eliminate the slave situation, I would do so. But by pulling off that maneuver, it was two things. One, slaves are now going to have the incentive to freaking defect so they can, amp up their ranks with the Union soldiers and create, the black units. And then you would have the other aspect where if you join the South now, you're going to look really bad on the international scale. So basically, France and the UK had to sit back because he pulled a tactical maneuver with
Yeah.
policy. Now, again, I'm just explaining from a perspective that a lot of people are saying that, Lincoln's the tyrant. I'm just giving you a little bit extra stuff that you probably did not know or way into the consideration of
I
whatever
mean,
books you
it
read.
makes sense, right? Why would they? Because you're like, dude, I'm on your side. Why would you be against me then?
Right, right,
Mm-hmm.
because you look really bad. It's like, well, you're a hypocrite. Speck and beans,
Mm-hmm.
brother. It's like you say this, but you're fighting for them. So the American Civil War was engineered by the Rothschild banking elites, and the Rothschilds used the divide and conquer strategy to take back America by creating a conflict between the North and the South. The North was to be the British colony annexed to Canada and under the control of Lionel Rothschild, like we were just reading. So this confirms this is not just some random slide on the internet. You can't take. The South was to be a French colony given to Napoleon III of France and under the control of James Rothschild. Interesting. Abraham Lincoln opposed this destruction of America by issuing the greenback to fund his defense against the international bankers. The bankers wouldn't stand for this. 5 days after the South surrendered, on April the 14th, 1865, Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, the member of the Knights of the Golden Circle.
Man, those names are just interchangeable. Banks. Just
Pretty much, dude. Whenever you see that,
Rothschild.
so, and then Lincoln is basically saying, I don't want to take a loan from the Europe because that's what's
Yep.
destroyed all the other countries. So I'm gonna do my own dang thing. I'm gonna create the greenback. Ah, dang it, man! If we can't control the money, we can't control this guy. If he takes away the union, we can't split it and give it to this guy and this guy, right? So he's causing problems. He's causing rifts. Does this sound like a guy who's actually working on behalf of the bankers? No. He's
No.
constantly causing problems for said bankers and their aspirations. So when I'm hearing the dictator argument, I'm hearing a little bit of somebody who's shooting from the hip, which is it's justified because again, I don't support big government and I understand the union argument, right? But what I am noticing here is that this guy is causing a problem. He's constantly being a monkey wrench to their plans. Now, Albert Pike was a member of the Knights of the Golden Circle. We just read here, Booth was recruited into the Knights of the Golden Circle, and he was doing his Texas, Oklahoma tours. And these guys don't like him, the Masons and the Jesuits, and we know that they're the bad guys. We know the Rothschilds are the bad guys. So, is there a little bit of some vindication coming along? I don't know. So as well, so we heard that what we heard in 1871 in the 1840s that Albert Pike was saying that they want to go after the Tsar of Russia, and that was part of their plans. The 3 world wars, first to take out the Tsar family in Russia, which they succeeded with the Romanov executions. Then they had to outline basically with Germany and having all that go out with Hitler. But did you know that in 1863, squadrons of the Russian Imperial Navy visited the United States? One was on the East Coast near New York, and one the West Coast of San Francisco, where they got a lot of gold for the Union. These visits during the American Civil War was primarily a show of support for the Union and a strategic positioning against the potential intervention from France or Britain. So again, a little bit more of I don't know where you're going, but oh dang, that does fit because what is it? It's another monkey wrench against the outline that was pitched by Albert Pike. The Russians' fleet presence in American waters was met with warm receptions and diplomatic gestures from the U.S. government and the public. And later
Hmm.
on in July of 1864, when things are gradually starting to wind down, the Pacific Squadron and the Russian Squadron left in July and August of 1864. Take of that what you will, but now imagine if you're Rothschild. They bundled your plans after the Napoleonic Wars with the Council of or whatever the Council of Nations, basically the first UN for Europe,
Yep.
and Russia bailed out, and you're like, again. Now in 1860s, what do? They put a monkey wrench when you're trying to split the Union. You come over and you put your fleets in the way. So you've just caused two offenses against them. And I'm not mistaken, I think this might have been the guy that got assassinated with the chariot, or his cart was riding by and he got assassinated with the crowd guy that ran by. I'm not sure, but I was trying to look into the Romanov history, his dad or his grandpa.
What? How did he die? And even if it
So,
was him,
so there was
what?
some kind of chariot buggy thing, and they tried to kill him with like a bomb. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So and
Like
again,
the
it was
first
within his
car bomb
20.
kind of thing or
Yeah,
something,
like
or what?
it's kind of like a run by car bomb a thing because they're trying or chariot bomb whatever. They basically were trying to take him out, and that was within 16 years of this. But like they hold a grudge, and it doesn't matter what time of century. Come to find out, the guy who shot uh the Duke for World War One, Duke Ferdinand, whatever.
Ferdinand, yeah.
Yeah, the guy
Franz,
guess his ethnicity. The guy who was the assassin,
you.
Jewish. Yep, it's just why is it every time there's a war and there's a conspiracy, there's either a Mason, a Jesuit, or a U, always affiliated. I'm not trying to throw hate. I'm not just secret
They just
society
can't
ideologies is what I'm against. Not
they just
authenticity.
can't be happy with the way it is. It's like, dude, just leave it where it's at. You know,
Yeah.
you always got to be getting more, stirring some shit up.
Yep. Yep. So anyway, so folks who just want to look into a little bit more, you can do a basic. But the interesting thing that I found to meet the government's financial needs during the Civil War, President needed Lincoln needed a Treasury Secretary Salmon P. Chase borrow from foreign governments and American citizens, instituted the country's first general income tax, and printed paper money, so-called greenbacks. Now, Salmon P. Chase,
Fuck you for that. I mean, pardon
he's
my
the guy in
French,
charge of
but
Chase Banks. Yeah, right. Chase Banks is actually where this guy comes from. He was a Mason. He's from I think it was Ohio. He was he was the classic little little beta that run over and be like, well, Lincoln, and I'm gonna put in my resignation, and Lincoln would be like, listen, you can't do that. You're a great asset to this administration. Blah blah blah. You need to stay. So one of these days, Lincoln actually called his bluff, and he's basically like, okay, I accept. Huh? He was always trying to do this because he was trying to just basically state that like, I have an opinion and needs to be heard. And then one day Lincoln actually called his bluff. And then when Lincoln needed a new what do you call it? The federal judge, whatever. What do you call the top judge? The Supreme Court,
Supreme, yeah.
whatever. The
A
top,
justice, the
yeah,
Supreme Court
the Supreme
justices.
Justice. Yeah, yeah. When he needed the guy to be the new head of that, he picked Salmon P. Chase, and this is the guy that walked by with the vice president and basically swore in Andrew Johnson before Lincoln even drew his final breath. This was the guy's house, I think, if I'm not mistaken. They went to his house for it, and I'm like, you little douche. Masons don't care about people. They just want the agenda to keep going through.
They let him after they assassinated Lincoln, they had a Masonic ritual, swearing in the White House with stuff.
Yeah. And I think it was twice. Once was it 67? I think one of them was 1867, and I can't remember the other date. But when Albert Pike basically was pardoned by Andrew Johnson, the second time Albert Pike went to the White House was when he was basically initiating Andrew Johnson to be the 33-degree Mason.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, a former
Mhm.
Confederate is going to a vice president
Yeah. After
guy,
the other one's been assassinated.
Right. I would love a book on that because I would really would like to find out what went down in a sense of like they're probably in secret as well, but whatever. But as what Matt was saying earlier, when went down to Mexico City after the Mexican American War, Grant was there, Lee was there, a whole bunch of other guys, and they basically formed a lodge in Mexico City and took an oath. So granted, some went to the south, some went to the north. Yes, are politics still a thing between north and south? Yes. But then when they were having the surrender go by, there was an interesting little thing that was going on. If I remember correctly, there was a Indian native. Get out of here! Sorry, I have a bug on the screen. um, there was a Native American gentleman basically that was present, and Lee was a little bit apprehensive, and he was looking at her like, "What was he doing in here?" He says, "Don't worry, he's one of ours." Basically, because they were about to do some Mason stuff. What
weird.
again? This was let's see, what was the page?
He
Blogspot, maryebun.com. If people want to look into this a little bit more, I'm just doing a little bit of the condensed
he
version where you can find some more of the stuff I'm inferring to.
he was worried Indians. They didn't want Indians to be like Masonic.
Yeah,
Hmm.
he was a little bit apprehensive, but once he found out he was a Mason, he was like, "All right, I'll let it slide."
Yeah.
I was like, "Wow, you little prejudiced piece of crap." Like they were here first.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Another book that you might want to pick up, Michael, if you're interested. A whole list here. You can play it back when you're doing all your stuff. But Rome's Responsibility for the Assassination of Abraham Lincoln by Thomas M. Harris. This guy was one of the leading prosecutors slash a detective after the post-Lincoln assassination. He came to find out that a lot of the conspirators had some Jesuit Catholic ties, and he wrote this book back in 1885. Yeah, very worthwhile pickup read. You can get it for like $12 on Amazon, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that kind of price.
Yeah.
As well, I found out in here is that 1867 we passed legislation in the U.S. United States Senate. We passed legislation forbidding all ambassadorial funds of going to the Vatican. Now, why I found that interesting is, like I said, I'm going to be connecting this to the Jesuit Masonic Alliance. Why I found that interesting is that we didn't reverse that until Lincoln went to go visit the Pope. Sorry, Reagan.
Really.
Yeah. So the
Did we
only
back
country
pay
that did
him?
not
So
give
next
condolences-
episode is Reagan, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
Reagan was big time into this, dude. He Bohemian Grove. Yeah, not. He's painted very much in a. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, the only country that did not send their condolences once Lincoln died was the Vatican. Everybody else apologized. We're like, "Oh wow, we're sorry to hear about your
America's
loss."
never really liked the Vatican except for Trump, though.
I mean, what about Biden?
I never really paid attention to Biden.
He was
I
a
guess.
Catholic, kid.
Was he?
No, he's JFK.
JFK is. I feel like that dude was a movie character, like just made up.
Dude, his dad, yeah, when you look into his dad, he literally was buying all the positions for them. The interesting feud, though, between him and Johnson, well, what was the first guy's? It wasn't Johnson, the guy that took over after JFK? What was his first name?
No, that was before him.
Not Lyndon. The other
Lyndon
one.
B. Johnson. No, wasn't it Lyndon B. Johnson? Because he was
Maybe.
buddies with the guy
Yes.
from the FBI.
Yes. Yeah, Lyndon B. Johnson's right. Yeah.
And then it was after Lyndon, it wasn't it Nixon? Yeah,
Watergate.
early 70s, it was Nixon, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Just guesstimating here. I don't know history.
It's all corrupted right there.
Yeah. An interesting thing, though, in the book was Charles Chineke. There's some excerpts of some quotes that he has, and I'm going to be reading some of it. And he was basically going up to Lincoln saying that you once defended me back in 1830s when you were a lawyer, and you ticked off a Jesuit on the other side, right? He was trying to basically frame me because I left the Jesuit order and blah, blah, blah. And he was trying to get me in. Lincoln basically made mockery. He made jokes as per usual. It was his style and his, flamboyant character that's basically pissed him off going, you're making us look like fools in front of everybody. So he kind of already laid the cementing ground foundation of ticking off the Vatican then, or getting the ire of the Jesuits. Here's a quote that comes from Father Chineke when he was coming to visit Lincoln at the White House. My dear President, I answered, it was just this strange story published about you which brought me here yesterday. I wanted to say a word about it, but you were too busy. Let me tell you that I wept as a child when I read the story for the first time. For not only my impression of is that it is your sentence of death, but I have from the lips of the converted priest that it is the order to excite the fanaticism of the Roman Catholic murderers, whom they hope to find sooner or later, to strike you down. They have invented a false story of you being born in the Church of Rome and of you being baptized by a priest. They want, by that, to brand your face in the ignominious mark of apostasy. Do not forget that the Church of Rome, an apostate, is an outcast who has no place in society and who has no right to live. The Jesuits want the Roman Catholics to believe that you are a monster and an open enemy of God and of his church, and that you are excommunicated man. For every apostate, ipso facto, by that very fact, excommunicated, you have brought to the theology of one of the most learned and approved of the Jesuits of his time, Bossenbaum, who, with many others, say that the man, blah, 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 who will kill you will do a good and holy work. More than that, here is a copy of the decree of Gregory VII proclaiming that the killing of an apostate or a heretic of an excommunicated man, as you have declared to be, is not a murder. Nay, it is good, a Christian action. That decree is incorporated into the canonic law, which every priest must study and which every good Catholic must follow. My dear President, I must present to you here of when I was in Urbana in 1856. My fear is that you will fall under the blows of a Jesuit assassin if you do not pay more attention than what you have done till now to protect yourself. Remember that because of Coligny was a heretic as you are, he was brutally murdered in the St. Bartholomew night. That Henry IV was stabbed by a Jesuit assassin, Ravaillac, in the 14th of May, 1610, for giving liberty of conscience to his people, and that William of Taciturn was shot dead by another Jesuit murderer called Garand for having broken the yoke of the Pope. The Church of Rome is absolutely the same today as she was then. She does not believe and teach today, as then, that she has the right and that it is her duty to punish by death any heretic who is in her way as an obstacle of her designs. The humanity with which the Catholic hierarchy of the United States is on the side of the rebels, and the incontrovertible evidence is that Rome wants to destroy this republic, and as you are, by your personal virtues, your popularity, and your love for liberty, your position, and your greatest obstacle to the diabolical schemes, their hatred is concentrated upon you. You are their daily objective for malintent, let's put that way, malicious intent. It is the breast day they will direct their blows. My blood chills in my veins when I contemplate the day which shall come sooner or later when Rome will add to all of her other iniquities the murder of Abraham Lincoln. When saying these things to the president, I was exceedingly moved and my voice was choked, as I can hardly retain my tears. But the president was perfectly calm, and when I had finished speaking, he took the volume of Bosselman from my hand and read.
So this guy saw it coming for years.
I saw it coming, and we know that Lincoln was having visions of his assassination prior to it going down.
That's crazy.
I think I have here. Is this where he's talking about it? Yeah, but basically he was looking at him and he's like, I have no doubt that they're going to do it at some point. He says, but there's like no obstacle. There's just like nothing I can do here. There's even a speech that he gave like in 1863 talking about how the Jesuits have perverted the American American education system. He was already talking about it in 1860s, bro.
Yeah.
But basically he was saying, if I state to the American people that this is not just a civil war, that we are dealing against the Catholic Church, this is going to amplify the bloodshed 10 times more, and it's going to go 10 times longer. So let's keep it condensed, say it's only about civil rights, because if we try to do all that, well, what's going to happen, right? So, death to all heretics, death to all soldiers of liberty. He was devoted friends among the very men who, after preparedness of the massacre of the Admiral Coligny and his 75,000 Protestant countrymen, rang the bells of Rome to express their joy. And when they heard that at last the King of France had slaughtered them all. But where are those bishops and priests of Canada? Send John Surratt, who is a co-conspirator of Booth, when they find it impossible to conceal him any longer from the thousands of detectives of the United States. So, let me give you a little bit story here. John Surratt was part of the House of Surratt, or the boarding house where they went to go. And again, I scratch my head. Why immediately after the assassination, you know immediately to go to that boarding house?
Someone told you.
That's what I'm saying. You have a whole state to go by here. You're not going in the city. You're like,
Yep.
or you have tabs. How do they know? And I'm going to explain. So John Surratt was Booth's co-conspirator, and they had what do you call it? They had a little contingency up in Montreal, Canada, where they basically were having a lot of their talks, and a lot of people were getting a little bit apprehensive in America, going, "Hold on, this is a neutral country, and the Confederacy is opening up basically an embassy, and they're having military talks right across our northern border, and we're not putting an end to this." And they didn't do anything until it was the St. Albans raid. Are you guys familiar with that?
I've heard of St. Albans raid.
Yeah, I went up there. It's very interesting. My buddy's very close by. Basically, a cavalry unit from the Confederacy rode in through Vermont, and they whacked a town there, and they robbed everything. They went back up into Montreal, Canada. They were heralded as heroes, and this basically caused a little bit of an international incident, and they were seized. They were put on trial, but basically were let go. But even when being under like house arrest and stuff like that, they're being invited to banquets and all this stuff, and they're like, "What the frick? I
Yeah,
thought
national
Canada."
heroes.
Yeah, it was not a good look. But John Surratt, after this assassination, he went back up there, and he was hidden by two Jesuit priests for up to 5 months until they shipped him over, which we have here, on the Peruvian on the 15th of September of 1865. Who can have any doubt that when who can suppose that when the Pope himself and his Jesuits will protect the murderer of Abraham Lincoln in Europe? If you want to see him after they cross the ocean, go to Vitry at the door of Rome, and there you will find him enrolled under the banners of the Pope in the Ninth Company of the Zouaves, under the false name of Watson. Of course, the Pope was forced to withdraw his protection over him after the government of the United States found him there, and he was brought back to Washington to be tried. But at his arrival as a prisoner of the United States, his Jesuit father confessor whispered in his ear, "Fear not, you will not be condemned. Through the influence of the high Roman Catholic lady, 2 or 3 of the jurymen will be Roman Catholics, and you will be safe." So what this guy did, he went over to the UK. He went to the very city where they were making all the iron ships for the South in the UK, because they were cutting off ties just yet. No. And he went to that city. Basically, there was a call made saying, "Hey, that the conspirator of Booth that you have like a $400,000 reward on, he's here. Do you want us to apprehend him?" Now, the Secretary of War, Edwin, what is his name? Edwin, I'm drawing a blank. Edwin Black? I'm drawing a blank as to his freaking name. Hold on. I can't remember the guy's name. Was it the next one? Anyway. Lincoln's Secretary of War. Let's go with that. He basically gives an answer that's so vague, they don't know whether they should apprehend him or not. And this guy basically gets the, "Hey, you need to get out of here." So he goes down to the Vatican. He goes to a little town outside, and he joins the Catholic, basically, guard. And another guy who's basically doing an independent, "I'll track him down," he joins and as well finds him there. And he escapes again. He gets out this really hard angle where they say he jumped out, but it's like, he didn't jump out. There's no way that we can make a jump like that from what the guy was rigging out. So basically, they let him go. He escaped to Cairo, Egypt. Eventually, he was apprehended, and he was brought back to the U.S., and he went on trial, but he was let off. So, yeah. So Jefferson Davis, he basically got a letter from the Pope that said, "Hey, you're totally fine, and you are your own sovereign country. In reply to both such a freely made Roman Catholics, the orators of the Irish fought the battles of the Civil War and saved the nation. The following document received the pension department in the Washington is here. The whole number of groups that were recruited of the numbers of troops was 2,128,200. Of the Native Americans, there was like 1,627,000. 267. Germans was 189,000. The Irishmen were 144,000. British, so on and so forth. After this particular letter that Jefferson got, the desertions were as followed. The natives of the U.S. that were Catholic, 5% deserted. Germans, 10%. And the Irish Catholics, 72%.
Just bailed on us.
So when you watch movies like Gangs of New York and they're having the riots for the draft, why? Because you just had like, a good portion. Let's say you add this all up, that's like 82, 87, 89. That's like 94% of your ranks saying, yeah, we're done. Why? Because the Catholic Pope said that they're their own country. So why are we going to go fight our own countrymen if the Pope basically put them in a good light?
That's crazy.
Again, do we see that in the movie? No, but is it a contributing factor to all of that? Yeah. And it would behoove us to look into it because it's like people died. Right? So, a book, this is not, I wouldn't give this a 5-star. I'd give this about like a 3 point something because it seemed like the guy's editor was heavily screwed him over because there's a lot of parts that are kind of like reading over the same thing, but there is a bunch of trivia in Montreal City of Secrets by Barry Sheartree. He went up to Canada, he took pictures, and he found out the exact hotel where all this was going down, and basically made a list of all the people that were involved, including John Surratt, talking about the people that recruited him, connecting with Captain P.C. Martin, who wrote letters of introduction to Dr. Mudd, who is the person that Booth visited after getting shot, and a whole bunch of other people on the route that Booth used to escape.
Escaped POWs.
Prisoners of war?
Yeah, that's some of it down there. Look at the bottom. They used escaped POWs.
Oh, yeah. Bennett Young was the guy who read the St. Albans raid and stuff like that. Let's just say Montreal is not something to be tossing out. I think if we actually covered this, that's why they don't tell us too much about it, dude. Because if we started digging into this, we'd start going, wait a minute, how come we don't talk about this? Because Edwin Stanton, sorry, that was the name of the guy. Edwin Stanton, Lincoln's Secretary of War. Very creepy guy. Don't like him. There was a thing where like his wife died, or his daughter, or whatever, and he took their nightgown and he put it on their bed and he was like laying next to it. And I was like, that's there's sentimentality, and then there's like, hey, anyways,
this is why you don't like Canadians, Matt.
I knew that there was something up with him. And
He
it
was
was
a
going
Canadian.
down.
He was a Canadian, but he was a Rothschild agent, just as Judah Benjamin on the other side was, and he was one of the top 3 guys that basically betrayed Lincoln because his brother-in-law, who was like the chief of police in the U.S. equivalent, he went into Canada. He went to this particular hotel, which was a known hub for a whole bunch of Civil War sympathizers / spies. And he signed his name, his actual name, in the ledger right underneath the name of the woman, Sarah Slater, who was part of the group that was going to assassinate Lincoln, right? So he signs his name in the ledger, and they know that he is related to a guy who's in the administrational cabinet of Lincoln, and he signs his name in there without any, like, you couldn't put Smith, couldn't put, like, but you're the police commissioner of the U.S., like detectives. Like, they should have that as, like, the top 100 guys we're looking for if they happen to run into. But you had no hesitation of doing so. And it was said, as I'm going to read, that basically they were talking, his guy, douche. I don't like him. As well, during when the trial was coming down, he had Booth's diary. And there was like 15 to 18 pages missing. And they're saying, dude, you got to hand this over. This is a freaking federal case. I'm not going to do it. Dude, that's not a request. This is a federal investigation of an assassination of a president. Fine. 18 pages are missing. what was on those 18 pages, Mr. Stanton? And the guy who retrieved it for him, he was like the assistant police detective to his brother-in-law. He died of arsenic poisoning.
Convenient.
Yeah, so it's like, what did he know that was in those papers that you didn't want other people to know about?
Yep.
Eh, Again, just stuff that makes you scratch your head, makes you go, all right, what did you know? What are you hiding from the trial? Now, allegedly, this is Sarah Slater. They're not quite sure, but she's referred to as the woman in the veil because she's frequently was known for wearing like a little shrouded veil like they had back in the day. Some guy thinks he knows where he might have found her. I have the book. I'm gonna try to read it. It's under that title, if I remember correctly, The Lady in the Veil. I kind of want to find out where she went because she kind of went off the book, but allegedly he thinks he found her. We'll see. And this is P.C. Martin. The interesting thing about him is prior to the war, he sold Catholic Bibles. And he was the guy that wrote basically letters of introduction. So basically, if you're a soldier from the United Kingdom, you're coming over here into Canada and you want to go talk to Robert E. Lee, I'm going to write you a letter of introduction, basically saying, I've cleared this guy, he's cool, blah, 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 and I'll give you the letter of introduction. This is the guy that they went to go see.
Okay. I guess
Right?
you had experience in writing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he died very mysteriously at sea. If I'm not mistaken. I think he was the guy. Makes you wonder, was it an accident or did you know something and they try to, there was an accident already or the storm at sea. There was a storm, but it seems like a lot of things went missing on that ship that this guy was on. It just makes
Look
you
at
wonder.
his hat.
This is John Surratt. This is Boots, co-conspirator.
Conspirator. Yeah.
This is him in full regalia of working for the Vatican post the Lincoln assassination within a couple months.
What is he, a genie?
Yeah, dude.
No, this is the Zouaves. This is the part of their regalia uniform for serving on their whatever. Now, I think the other one said September, but this one says July, the Peruvian, the 15th. Why such tender sympathies for the stranger? Why going through the trouble of basically keeping this guy safe? The American among the bishops of the priests of Canada. There's only one answer. He was one of their tools. He was an agent, basically, of the Jesuits, one of their selected men to strike the great republic of equality and liberty to the heart. For more than 6 months before the murder, the priest had lodged, eaten, conversed, slept, and with him under the same roof in Washington. They had trained him of his deed of blood by promising him the protection on earth and a crown of glory in heaven, if he would only be true to their designs to the end. And he had been true to the end. Now the great crime is accomplished. Lincoln is murdered. Jeff Davis, the dear son of the Pope, is avenged. The great republic has been struck in the heart, and the soldiers of liberty all over the world are weeping over the dead form for whom they have led to victory. A cry of desolation goes from the earth to heaven.
So what
Does
they do
this
with the other
sound-
2 wishes?
Huh?
What they do with the other 2 wishes?
Wow. I don't know, dude. For me, I'm looking at this going, he's guilty of sin.
Oh,
And the
yeah.
fact that you knew exactly where you're going to go right after you die, or sorry, your co-conspirator gets the lash. You run right to the Vatican. You hold
Mhm.
right onto their little curtain. That's not something you just snap of a finger. I'm thinking of doing it. And as well, he was buried with full Catholic honors, only reserved for like great people or like a saint equivalent for the church. This guy is the poor son of a shoe cobbler. What did you do on behalf of the Vatican? There's no explanation unless...
Because you offended a Jesuit?
Just saying, Lincoln knew how to press buttons, dude. That book is very... I did not hear this before. How come no one told me this part of the story? And there
Yeah.
was even... there's even parts of the story, dude, where there were 2 Jesuit priests. I think it was in Minnesota. They were talking about how Lincoln was already, basically he's going to go down. We have it all set in play. And this guy overhears this conversation. He's like, I didn't hear anything about the news. And it was almost like 2 days before it actually happened. How
Yeah.
did they know? How did
Yeah.
you know? You're way out in the middle of the boondocks of Minnesota. The telegraph and stuff like that. Like, how do you know this? Unless, and again, Easter weekend.
Imagine being Lionel and James too, and they're like, you'll have this half and you'll have that half, and you're like, well, they murdered him, dude. I guess I'm taking that half. I don't want
Who's to say they still didn't, dude? Because in 1871, Grant sold us over to the basically become corporate America.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? That's such a good point.
It's like I don't really like. Again, I read most of the history with a grain of salt. Like, okay, that's interesting. Then I understand the backdoor. What lodge are you part of? What part of organization are you part of? And the more I look into that, I start going, I'm not buying the official narrative. There's got to be something more. And that's what they call conspiracy. With me, it's no, I want to know what went on behind the closed door that we're not talking about. And when you look into it, there's some vindication here. I'm not
Yeah.
saying completely. I understand the Dakota hangings and stuff like that. I'll grant that. Maybe that's part of the thing I will concede. That was maybe stupid. But again, the Jesuit order, they have connections with Freemasonry and the all-seeing eye of Tammuz, Nimrod's son. This Pope hat is matching what I showed you guys earlier with the Knights of the Golden Circle. There's credibility here. It's not something that's so fringe, as I just see.
Yeah.
It's a dead-ass replica.
Ballsy move too to say we're built off Christian in one of the first slides, Christian something, right?
Yes.
Where you have this, you have this photo that was sitting right in the front. Not a single person in that photo looks like a Christian.
It's you're just looking at it like, okay, so if the sigil that they're wearing was a little cross that they had, right? And that's the same cross on this guy's. I rest my case, Your Honor. The Jesuit Masonic Alliance is showing itself. Yes, they did team up, and people are saying they're enemies. I'm like, yeah, this is some sketches of somebody who got inside somehow, and or they were just drawing and doodling in the corner. This is what they looked like when they came for the meetings. And you notice the crescent moon in the little triangle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does that kind of look like the triangle, the all-seeing eye?
Looks like a boat.
Yeah, I was going to say
like
a little sailboat.
Little sailboat, guys. But the crescent moon, what's that a symbol usually of?
Yeah.
Virgin Mary and or Semiramis.
Or what do the Muslims have it signifying?
ISIS?
Yeah, I was going to say it's one of those deity women.
Yeah. But you see how they're locking it in place. And the sun again, which is affiliated with Jesuits, but this is allegedly in their thing between two pillars. The ascended man, skull and bones,
triangle up top.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, could be wrong, but it looks like a Masonic organization to me, this Knights of the Golden Circle.
That it's not Christian principle, I could tell you that.
All right, and as we did in Doge, the follow-up of that, they're starting to wear masks. Were they doing penance because we technically failed with the original plan, but we're going to make amends for how we failed in the South? Putting on the mask, doing penance when we go on these raid rides across the South, invoking terror, right?
Like the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
They allege that Albert Pike, again, because he was part of the Knights of the Golden Circle, that he was one of the key instigators of creating the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
Avenging Crusaders in essence, but you're doing what? Acts of terror, like John Brown did. Yeah. So I'm just noticing a consistent pattern. I could be wrong, but I'm just going. So this guy, he was a billiards champion, and he heard the phrase come from John Wilkes Booth. He was over here basically shooting pool with him, and he heard him say the phrase, a double karam, and the bag's biggest game this side of hell. In billiards terms, the karam refers to the act of sinking more than one ball simultaneously. When talk turned to an upcoming election and Lincoln's prospects, Booth said, it makes damn little difference who wins, heads or tails. Abe's contract is nearly up, and whether he is reelected or not, his goose is cooked. Dion, the pool player, thought this was just boozy bravado until he heard the news of Lincoln's assassination 6 months later in April of 1865. Yes. And again, they were even talking about possibly killing Lincoln as early as February of 1865, which means the guy who is the chief of his security, Edwin Stanton, knew at least 3 months ahead of time that this was a thing.
Yep.
You can't tell me he did not know. He couldn't have prepped a little bit better.
He gave the info, probably.
Yeah. Well, his brother-in-law was over here. Like you said, he was probably funneling information through him.
They
Mhm.
watched the
During
guy
Booth's
walk
stay
and
in
get on the roof that one time too. Remember?
Yeah.
Just saying.
I'll help you. I'll help you. During Booth's stay in Montreal, a young messenger named George Isles formed a friendship with the actor. A hero worship might be a better description of their relationship. Isles delivered messages from a number of locals, including John Buckland, an owner of Montreal's Royal Theatre and a friend of Booth's. The impressionable young man remembered Booth's brandishing a large knife, very possibly the same knife used to slash Major H. Rathbone in Lincoln's box at Ford's Theatre. While promising to make short work of the president, kidnapping may have been Booth's original aim, but his behavior and choice of words in Montreal leads to suggest that he was contemplating a more lethal outcome. Finally, we know that the key members, Edwin Stanton's National Detective Police, were in Montreal, and Stanton's chief spy, Lafayette Baker, this is the guy who had the diary and died of arsenic, was a regular at St. Lawrence Hall, as was his brother-in-law, Walter Pollock, who was also a National Detective Police. Pollock
Convenient.
checked it. Right. Pollock checked into the hotel the same day as John Wilkes Booth on October 18th of 1864 during the cotton for contraband trade. Baker checked in a few days earlier as John L. Baker. No point of departure of room number is given. A hotel, much like a ship, is a small place where gossip rumors flourish. Booth made little attempt to disguise his violent intentions towards Lincoln, especially when he was drinking. That was no hotel. The fact that no one in the hotel overheard or reported these threats, not even the National Detective Police present, remains astonishing.
They were in on it.
That's
They had
what I'm saying, dude.
yeah.
Like it could be wrong, but you again, it's rare books. You compare it though, and you start looking at it, and you're going, okay, so it seems like there's a consistent pattern here. Yeah, the Trent
Yeah.
affair. This is what I was talking about earlier.
You knew way ahead of time. You put all these people in place to like watch and route and plan it out. And then you knew they would be on your side to not like stop it or get in the way.
Yes,
Yeah.
but then what did I just say with the date? It was October 18th, 1864.
Mm-hmm.
Now look when the St. Albans raid went down.
The very next day.
The very next day, guys. Like, does that not kind of sound like now's the best time to go? Blah 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 blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. We've gotten the thumbs up, and then you okay, we ride.
Yep. Yep. I made it up here. I talked to everybody. It's a
The
go.
timing, dude. The timing is so succinct. You're just going. Could be wrong, but look at the dates. Look at the times. Look at the. That by the way, that was a real picture, by the way, of John Surratt. That was literally taken at the Vatican. So if people are just curious, this is a good book. I can't pronounce it, but Xavient Hayes, The Suppressed History of American Banking, How Big Banks Fought Jackson, Killed Lincoln, and Caused the Civil War. They tried to assassinate Jackson. And he says, the bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it. Lincoln, he said, at this time I face two great enemies, the Confederate army in front of me and the banks behind me. Of the two, the one at my rear is my greatest enemy.
The
I'm
bank.
just saying, to call him a tyrant outright does make me scratch my head. We're wrapping up. This
He's
is
not. He's not.
this is
Though.
from Gerald Bank. This is from Gerald Posner's God's Bankers, and this is tying into what Matt just implied earlier. The Vatican antiquated view about money meant that it did nothing to encourage fiscal growth or industrial development in the Papal States. The economy stagnated, and over decades, tax revenues steadily declined. By the time of Gregory XVI, the son of a lawyer, became Pope in 1831, the situation was so dire that he felt compelled to do something remarkable. He borrowed money from the Rothschilds, Europe's preeminent Jewish banking dynasty. The loan of 400,000, which an equivalent was $43
Oh,
million in 2014, was a lifetime to the church. Lifeline to the church. The Rothschilds had solid reputation when it came to bailing out distressed governments. They had steadied Austria's finances after the Napoleonic Wars and provided enough money to squash two rebellions in Sicily. James de Rothschild, head of the family's Paris-based headquarters, became the official papal banker. One of his brothers, Karl, who ran the family's Naples branch, began traveling to Rome to consult with the Pope. Their financial empire prompted a mixture of envy and resentment among the church officials. Most traditionalists, who referred to James as the leader of the international Jewry, was applauded that the church had resorted to Christ killers for financial succor. French poet Alfred de Vigny wrote that a Jew now reigns over the Pope and Christianity. He pays monarchs and buys nations. German political writer Karl Ludwig Born, born Loeb Baruch, but changed his name upon being a Lutheran, thought that Gregory had demeaned the Vatican by giving Karl Rothschild an audience. Born noted that a wealthy Jew kisses the Pope's hand, whereas a poor Christian kisses the Pope's feet. He fanned the distrust among many of the faithful, and the Rothschilds are assuredly nobler than their ancestors Judas Iscariot. He sold pigs for 30 small pieces of silver, and the Rothschilds could buy him if he were for sale.
Yeah. Dude, that's
exactly
great.
as we started this whole thing, and I forgot about that.
You're never going to pay back 43 million in that time. So of course they owned you. They were like, yeah, here's the money.
If they have this Pope Gregory the Sixth, if I remember correctly, he helped finish the Washington Monument. We didn't have enough whatever stone it was that they were using, and you can see that different shade today in the Washington Monument. And again, the great city was divided into three parts that we read in Revelation: City of London, which is finance and banking; the Vatican, which is the religion; and military is Washington D.C. Three different continents, different regions, but all leading to the same Whore of Babylon.
Obelisk standing there.
And in closing, we're getting to this. The biography is incredible with Schofield and his book, The Incredible Schofield and His Book by Joseph M. Canfield. The admission of Schofield to the Lotus Club, which we are all familiar with connections of connecting with the Luciferian groups, which could not have been sought by Schofield, strengthens the suspicion that has cropped up before that someone was directing the career of C.I. Schofield, who was none other than Jacob Schiff, the Rothschild agent, as referred to before, and the IRS founder.
What?
Yup, he helped found our IRS.
Yeah, well, fuck that guy too.
Yep, and don't
Pardon
tell me
my
that's
French.
wrong, because Israel's Supreme Court is the same all-seeing eye that's on our money.
Why?
Because they
really don't like that guy.
It makes sense.
Money, control
it
the
makes
people.
sense why we cut everybody off in America except Israel lately.
Yeah, and that's just the thing, dude. Is that now they want us basically?
And the UK, dude, like I was just saying, is ready to like go toe to toe to Russia too.
Yeah, and now they control Russia because they control Putin with him talking with all the special U's and taking out all the people in Ukraine, right? Because you're trying to establish the Khazarian Empire once more, right? Because if we're going to already destroy the Promised Land, we need to give this back to where we were originally. And what are we going to do? Well, look at the infrastructure going on in Ukraine, and I think you'll be able to start piecing things together. I don't know, but I don't think it was a coincidence that you started this whole thing with Judas, and that ended up connecting to the topic today at hand.
Yeah. Dude, that was cool, too. This is a cool one.
Yeah,
I liked it. And I never... That's so wild, too, that, like... Dude, at least a year before, probably, this had been a downfall and been seen. Then, like, 6 months in, his own party is turning on him, like, no, yeah, you're going to have to off him.
Dude, yeah, he had traitors in the onshoot. And I think what they were trying to do is if we can't, lick him, we're going to off him. That's what the first assassination attempt, which failed. And then they tried to do the second one, and they succeeded.
Yeah.
But it was basically, he's not listening to what we whisper in his ear. Okay, well, if he's not pliable, we have to eliminate. So when I'm reading people saying he's solely a dictator, he suspended this, he did that, blah, 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 I looked into a lot more of his personal life and leading up to all this. He didn't even want to do politics, dude. He literally only did it because of his his wife was a bee. Let's just put it this way. His wife was a bee. On their honeymoon, they were in the kitchen, and the landlady, she saw they were in an argument, and Mary Todd threw a boiling cup of coffee in Lincoln's face, and he just sat there like, not, yeah, he didn't even react. I was like, damn.
Jeez.
And he actually ran away from her first time when they were going to get married on her birth. Was it on her birthday, or they got married on her birthday? So he said, "All right, fine." He came back after about a year or two, and he's like, "Fine, I'll marry you." And she's like, "Okay, today you're going to get married to me today because I don't want to lose up on this." So he's sitting in the room, and as he was polishing his shoes, getting ready to get ready, he's staring out the window,
What's
and
a
this kid
sales
walks in
tactic?
that was staying at the house, and he goes, "Where are you going?" And he replied, "To hell, I suppose." Dude,
Man,
she
they make
wasn't.
it seem like the men are in charge back then, but yeah, no.
Dude, okay, so he literally got the notification that is like, okay, put your hat in the ring for the presidency. And when he found out he was actually one of the winning contenders of the ticket, he literally walked home going, "How? How did I win that?" And she said, "I'm not going to marry a man unless he's going to become president of the US." Now, she actually was courting the guy he was debating, the Douglas guy. She was courting him and Lincoln.
Just
So
in
you
case
can
it
actually,
didn't work out.
yeah, well, she kind of. I'm chuckling, dude, because even Texas didn't have Lincoln on the ballot. All of his own family members
Hmm.
didn't even vote for him.
Um, you ever seen that photo that they have old and it's Lincoln or it's Mary Beth or whatever sitting there and Lincoln's ghost is holding her shoulders? It's after he's been assassinated and she took a portrait and you can see like his watermark holding on to her.
This is
It's
the thing?
pretty, yeah, that's a real photo. There's a real photo. It's in the Smithsonian.
Oh, that sounds creepy as hell.
It is. um,
She did seances and stuff like that. There's a YouTube
yeah.
thing I'm gonna be watching a little bit later on that, a little bit more in depth. But as over here, like, I don't. When I'm seeing people dictate him solely as a guy that was not good for America, I do chuckle because everything he did do, while you don't appreciate him at the time, which I get, it does sound like he was turmoiled every time like he got a battle report, as John Hayes, his secretary, was talking about. You hear him crying and walking back and forth all night long. I mean, look at his face, dude, at the end of the war. That's a guy with a conscience.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, yeah.
just saying, you may not like him, but that's a guy who's like, I hate every single day that I'm doing this because
We
this
called
is,
him Honest Abe.
yeah.
Right?
Well, and even still, he loved a woman and died back, I think, 1830s. Her name was like Anne something, Rutherford. Um, she died, and he almost committed suicide. And like they were taking away his pocket knife and stuff like that because they're like, we can't
Oh,
trust you.
wow.
Yeah, you might hurt yourself. So I'm over here going, this guy was not what you call the brightest of the brightest, but he was definitely a guy that literally didn't have aspirations for politics. It was never his goal. He only did it because of his wife.
Do you think like William Seward refused to acknowledge the Pope purposely to fuck Link or screw Lincoln over?
I suspect there's something there with Seward. I'm still looking into him. I haven't found any Masonic definitive links, but the
Mm-hmm.
fact that he stayed in the administration so long and he was part of the Alaska Purchase,
Yeah.
I mean, they did attempt to kill him, but he didn't necessarily die. So was that to make it look good? I don't know. There's many variables. But I do scratch my head with Seward. I do think, if I remember correctly, Seward and Edward Stanton were basically both pulling like the Game of Thrones classic. They were sending their own emissaries into Canada
Mm-hmm.
to try to negotiate peace behind the president's backs. Like it was their own separate things,
Yep.
which makes you wonder if you're trying to negotiate peace without actually talking to the president, does that mean there's an open offer on the table that any means possible? Don't know, but yeah, it
Dead or
plausible.
alive was a big thing back then.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
sir. So again, no definitive proof. This is just some interesting things. Again, rewind if you want to find all the books. Or I hope you're taking notes when people listen, because if people
Oh
start
yeah.
taking notes when I'm talking, it would help immensely. Because I was saying you never put any books. Well, I put a couple on the screen, and then I
Yes.
also stated and spelled out the author's name. So, anyways, yeah.
Right on, dude. Well, thank you.
Thank you for
That,
letting me do this update. I haven't done this one in over a year, so
yeah, that was fun. That's good to
That
people
is
should know
really
the
interesting.
People should know that type of history, right? They don't just
Well,
assassinate the dudes they put in charge, right? So
well,
there's
the other
reason
thing,
they assassinate them.
if you're causing a problem, like again, same thing with JFK. If you're
Mhm.
causing a problem, let's look into the problem as opposed to putting on labels of saying it's all of y'all's. Because I think there's a little bit of a loophole of once in a while. Dang it, we didn't plan on this guy getting in through our system. Now
Mm-hmm.
they've solidified it where there's no, they can manipulate who they put in and whatnot.
Oh
Before
yeah,
it was a little bit like it's 50-50, but if we need to, we can always, if we need to. And they did. They didn't mess around.
nice. Well, we are the end of day's best friends. I'm Michael.
And I'm Matt.
Brandon, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, Mana Daily Podcast, Spotify, Rumble, YouTube, and if you can, Patreon, and then Kroll, KROLL all one word, _101 for Instagram, if you can find me, because we know that they censor all that stuff. But I'm sure you can put all those links down below, and thanks for having me on again, guys.
Heck yeah, man. They will all be in the show notes for everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.